I'm just curious of how many people right now just feel alone and abandoned. Just having to go through this situation of being, confined to their homes and not being able to get out and interact with people because we're trying to save people from this virus. But that's one of my major prayers is that everybody knows that they're not alone. And I think that's why this lesson really got me. As Christians, we should truly understand that we aren't alone. I mean, in the world, there's so many people that say they have our back. I mean, the military phrase, I got your six. There's so many people that say that, but when push comes to shove and something does happen, I mean, you look back and they're a long way off. I mean, with binoculars, you probably couldn't see them because they say they got your back. Everything's going to be great. But then when trouble and diversity happens, you can't find them. But what I want us to look at today is, hey, as Christians, we are never alone. Because we have a God that's never going to desert us. He's there for us. He has our six. Go over to Deuteronomy. I'm going to lead up to this. I mean, the Israelites have been wandering around for 40 years in the wilderness, being led by Moses. And we know that Moses, the Lord already said he's not going. So chapter 31 kind of is Moses announcing that to the people of Israel and is like, hey, I'm not going with you. Let's just read it. And it says, so Moses went and spoke these words to all of Israel. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today, and I am no longer able to come and go. And the Lord has said to me, you shall not cross this Jordan. It is the Lord your God who will cross ahead of you, and he will destroy these nations before you, and you shall dispossess them. Joshua is the one who will cross ahead of you, just as the Lord has spoken. The Lord will do to them just as he did to Sihon and Og and the kings of the Amorites, and to their lands, when he destroyed them. The Lord will deliver them up before you, and you shall do to them according to all the commands which I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Then Moses called to Joshua and said to him in the sight of all of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land which the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give to them, and you shall give it to them as an inheritance. The Lord is the one who goes ahead of you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. I mean, this end of Deuteronomy into Joshua, we hear that phrase a lot. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. We also get this phrase that the Lord will never leave you. He will never forsake you. I mean, in this time right now that maybe some of us are, completely solus and by ourselves in our house. And, I know a lot because we're delivering communion cups and food to people. I mean, do not be dismayed. Do not fear. Do not feel like you're alone, because you're not. Because God said, he will never fail you. He will never leave you. He'll never forsake you. You don't have to be in constant worry and constant anxiety that you're alone in this world right now, that there's nobody with you. No, God is with you. Look at Joshua 1:5. This is God talking to Joshua. He says, no man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you, and I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, so that you give this people possession of the land I swore to their fathers. I mean, it's like, God just keeps trying to tell him, hey, I will not forsake you. I will be with you. I mean, that we get that. We see these stories all through the Bible. I mean, what pops in my head right now is Joseph. I mean, the youngest son, having these, this special coat made for him. He has these dreams to say that, he's going to be where he ends up. But I can't think of how many verses with Joseph being, sold off by his brothers into slavery and a period of time spent in prison. But how many verses in between that period does it say that God is with him? A lot. Literally, it says God is with him through all this, through being in prison, being, sold into slavery. This reassurance that God is with him. And that's what we need. We need to have this understanding that, hey, we might be going through this awkward time right now. But guess what? As Christians, God is with us. And are those people that aren't Christians that I don't know how, I just wonder how many of them just feel lonely and depressed and just not understanding that they could have somebody with them as well. That through love and obedience to God, that he's right there with us. He'll lead us through. He'll never fail us. He'll never forsake us. He will never desert us. He'll always have our six. He's always right there. We don't have to be concerned with it. I mean, Joseph, he went from being in prison to the one Pharaoh had in control of everything, just like his dream had told him. And many times in Scripture, it literally said that God was with him. God was with Joseph through the good times at the end, the good times in the beginning, but also those times of uncertainty in the middle. So as Christians, we have got to understand we are not alone. And he's not going to desert us. And we get this reminder also in Hebrews chapter 13. This is starting verse 1. It says, "Let the love of the brethren continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by this some have entertained angels without even knowing it. Remember the prisoners as though in prison with them, and those who are ill-threatened or ill-treated, since you yourselves are in the body. Marriage is to be held in honor among all, and the marriage bed is to be undefiled. For fornicators and adulterers God will judge. Make sure that your character is free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself says, I will never desert you, nor will I forsake you." Verse 6, "So that we confidently say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not be afraid. What will man do to me?" It goes through this list of love one another, be good to strangers, look after those that are, in prison, keep, marriage vows are sacred, don't put your faith in money. But he says, hey, have confidence in knowing that God is with you. This is all talking about a Christian's life of having contentment and being, content with what we have and the situations that we're going through. And I can't understand that some of, we live in Carlsbad, New Mexico. The oil field is one of the major industries in our region. And I can't just think of how many people have lost their job and, people are moving out. We're busting out the seams with trailer parks. And now I just see more and more are getting emptier and emptier as the day goes by. And I can't help but think of these people in this, when we're talking about this, is having this, as Christians, we should have this contentment, this understanding that, hey, whether or not it's, we're being loved by everyone, we treat people right, we'd be content. We'd have what we need. But God is there with us. He's never going to leave or forsake us. He will not desert you. And I think going into knowing that, hey, we might lose jobs. We might have to move. But guess what? God is with us. He's not going to desert us. He's not going to leave us. He's got our six. And I think that's what we're getting reminded here in Hebrews. It's like all these things, this list of 5 things is, all well and good. But it gives us that confidence to say that no matter what, through all of these, that God is our helper. And He will not leave us. And He will not forsake us. Because He's got our six. He's got our back. He's there with us. We don't have to be lonely. We don't have to, times are going to get tough. But guess what? God is there with us. He's going to get us through this. I mean, He was literally with Moses for 40 years wandering around in the wilderness. I mean, we know this. They ate, manna that fell from the sky. God would take care of us through thick or thin. I mean, whatever's going on in our lives, as long as we're within Christ, God's going to take care of us. God's got our back. We're not alone. He's not going to desert us. He's right here with us. He's right here. Next, I want us to go to Matthew. This one touched base with me a lot. When I was 30-something, I decided that I was going to give up working in the automotive industry and go and be a minister. You know how many people question that and tried to, the biggest question, well, who's going to take care of your family? Who's going to pay your bills? How are you going to do this? You're not going to work. You're going to go to school to learn about God and learn about Jesus. You kids need clothes and need food and you need a place to stay. In all that, in those 2 years of going to school, my kids never went without food. They always had a roof over their heads. And I mean, there was times when we were like, what are we going to do for, Christmas or for this or for that? And, God and other Christians supplied. Or should I say, God through other Christians helped us tremendously. And I got a card from a wonderful gentleman from our old church. Everybody goes to Matthew 28 and they think of the Great Commission to go out and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them. But in that card, this verse was written. Well, not this verse, but 20. Just 20. Matthew 28:20. In that card, there was a check. But it had that verse written real big on the other side. I'm going to read that verse. Chapter 28 of Matthew, verse 20. And it just had part, like the B section. It says, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. It had that written really big. And then underneath it said, hey, don't forget that Jesus is going to be with you through all of this. He's going to get you through it. But He said, I'm there with you right there. And just put His phone number, His email, told me, hey, if you need anything, I'm with you till the end of this age. This is a man doing this, but it's totally God using him to show me at that time that this was the right thing for me to do. For me to, pick up, leave a job, houses, friends, and not just me. We actually went through this conversation this week, and, I'm sitting in the living room, and they're like, I don't even remember what brought it up, but we were talking about this, and they're, Kelly and Rory are both like, we gave up, a lot for you to go to school. And I, looked over and be like, you gave up a lot for me, or did you give up a lot for, for God? Because that's the truly where we got to focus in on. We truly have to show this, hey, are we giving up things? Are we doing without because of God? Can we make the sacrifice like he made for us? Because knowing that and being in that, we know that he's going to take care of us. He's going to supply. I mean, Jesus' words right here, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. He's right there with us. We don't have to worry about this physical and pay more attention to the spiritual, that God is right there with us. He's got our six. We heard that word a lot today, that forsaken. There's only one time that I hear Jesus say it. And he's on a cross. And we get this picture of, I get this picture. We see, Jesus, God turning away, as we're put. And Jesus saying, why have you forsaken me? You know why he has forsaken him? I mean, we go to, that one verse, John 3:16. For God loves the world that he, gave us his own son. That forsaken, because he knew, he could have done everything. He could have stopped it. He could have finished it. It could have been, just dealt with. But he forgot. He forsake his own son for you and for me. So that we could live by these words that God will never leave us or forsake us. And that's only because Jesus went on that cross. And God had to turn his back on this evil and anguish, torment that Jesus was going through, so that it could save you and me. That way God could be with us and Jesus could be with us till the end of the age. That way he could have our back, because that's the only way it could happen. So right now, if you're out there and you feel lonely, you feel forsaken by the world, don't worry about the world. Come to Christ. Be buried with him in baptism. Rise a new person, a new being. And know that, guess what? God has your six. He has your back. And he's never going to forsake you or leave. You don't have to feel deserted in this world when you have Jesus. Anything that we can help you with. If you want to join Jesus in that burial and that resurrection to a new life, just let us know. Call up in the office, email me. Any way we can help you, just let us know. Y'all have a blessed and wonderful week.